In the knife in a box, you have a sanding block. This is what this is. It's a little white piece of perspex that I just cut out and specially made sanding block for all of you, and it has different radiuses everywhere. So as you guys can see, this side is a straight 90 for a very sharp plunge line, because the part that this is important for the different radiuses is actually coming in here and finding that. If you use the round file, it's going to be the same diameter as the actual round file, that plunge line. And if you use like a sharp edge or so, depending on which edge you use, you're going to use one of these four sides as your main side to actually be hand sanding. So let's say for instance I made this punch line a straight 90 degrees with a square file. Then I'm going to use the square part, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap my sanding paper around that part, and the square part's going to be here. So the square part of the sandpaper is going to engage with that part. So the square is down here, it's going to go flat, and when I'm gonna hand sand, it's actually going to go in there and it's going to perfectly match this radius. And on the sanding block you have a 90, a very small radius, a medium radius, and a nice big radius over here. And the main part of it is actually flat on both sides, and it's not really flat at the sides because all the sides are actually radiused, except the one that is a 90. So when I hand sand, I break it up in different parts for myself. So I'll do the main section over here, I'll do the tip, and then I'll do the nice back of the knife here. And then it's also your decision if you're gonna actually clean this part of the knife up. It's just marking blue that just to mark out layout lines for myself that I put there. But it's actually your choice if you're going to clean up this part. Then when you're going to hand sand the middle of the knife. It's going to be the easiest part, because you're not going to be struggling with that part over there, getting that hand sanded, or the tip where you might can slide off or round off. So hand sand this part first, then you get the main and the bulk of the material actually finished hand sanded. Then move on to the tip. When you're going to do the tip, be careful of the knife not slipping over, or your sanding block not slipping over and rounding out the point. As you guys can see, you're first going to, the little block I'm using now is actually in the way, so I can't touch the tip. So if I walk into this thing, I'm going to walk into the tip. So protect yourself in that way. I'd rather walk into this block than actually a sharp tip, because it's fairly thin, your knife now. So then you can start hand sanding that part of the knife. So if you put the sanding paper over, you can use it all like this, or when you want to actually use this radius, I rather would recommend you turn it and then start hand sanding like this. And then when you come, so hand sand the bulk like there, coming all the way back, and then you can see we're starting hand sanding there, and then we're going to move on to the tip. Just going to move my fingers and my thumbs out of the tip's way over here, hand sand that part, make sure everything's blended in, and then when we come to the tip, we're going to choose our radius. I am going to choose this radius specifically for my choil there, and I'm gonna come in there, and then what you can do is you can put it down and lift it up slowly to actually match in there and make sure you get all the scratches out there. Another cool method you can use is actually to put your sanding paper down, put your sanding block against that choil there, because it's difficult to hand sand, because this is flat, it's easy, that's difficult. So you can put your sanding paper in there, press it against there, make sure you have the right spot, and actually just pull it. And that way you get a nice crisp line without fading out all these lines on your knife, to make sure you got nice crisp lines and remove all your scratches. And then you obviously just move up in grids, from the rougher grids up until a 400 finish, and make sure all your scratches are out. And when you actually progress into grids and move up, when you hand sand, I would suggest, because all your scratches on this side are just going to go like this, okay? And the next, when your scratches are, is you're going to actually remove your scratches like this way. So you know all your scratches of the previous grid, or well, the file is this way, okay? So when you remove scratches in this direction, you can see when there's still scratches in this direction. So you can remove it by knowing that all your scratches need to be in this direction. So that's why I'm going to sand in this way. And then when I'm going to progress and put a lighter grid on, like a 400 or so, I would take your block and then move side to side. Still not rocking off of the knife like that, be careful, but move side to side, because you know all your scratches are now in this direction. So when you move in this direction, you can make sure all your scratches are in this direction to make sure that there's no scratches of the previous grid and you actually removed all your scratches on this knife. And then you have a very pretty sanded knife. This part, I don't want to round out or fade any parts of that part of the knife, so I would turn the sanding block this way, and you can just literally move this way without accidentally having a very small footprint that you're actually touching the knife and causing rocking, also where you fade out those lines, because you want those lines to be nice and crisp so it stands out. So just turn the sandpaper this way, and then you can sand all the way without fading out all these lines. And the last thing is, when you're actually going to be sanding the knife, when you stroke forward and backwards, every single time you do that to actually sand the knife, it's going to make a small start and stop mark. That's what I call it. So it's just a small mark with the sandpaper. It's indication where you actually sanded and then came back with your hand, because you're going to sand like this. So it's going to make a small little mark. So all you do is choose the same radius as that and put it in front and pull it all the way back. If you really want to, you can overlap a piece of the sanding paper over this part of your knife, hold it, and then just pull it one direction. That would remove those little dings and beginning and stop marks. So just when you're almost done, you just pull a nice one direction, start there, pull one direction, and the same with the flat part of your knife. That's at the top. Okay, now that our knife is finished sand and we're done with all that, to make sure there's no scratches, I'm just going to take a little bit of tape and just tape off the areas that we have sanded, and that way we know we can't get any scratches on this knife and the blade is protected. Okay, small little tip. We have put a layer of tape on this blade, but take two small pieces of leather or a piece of leather belt or so, something nice and squishy. You can even use toilet paper, and put it in between your vise so it does not make any scratches or things or nothing on your blade. There we go. And then it's just going to be like a little sandwich on both sides when you're going to clamp your knife. It does not get hurt.